We are out here standing up for women's rights because we believe that women's rights are human rights. We stand up for equity and equality in communities of color. We stand up for immigrants, union workers, and we stand for matters concerning environmental justice. We stand against the violence and exploitation of any and every vulnerable and marginalized population. We stand for justice, and when we stand up, we show up and we speak up.
Hey, this is Rev Leslye. I'm the Minister of Social Justice at Community of Hope AME Church, and I want to bring you greetings on behalf of our pastor, Reverend Tony Lee. And together we want to welcome you to another edition of the Hope Activism Institute. If you tuned in last week, then you know that we were here with Jay Quest talking about music in the movement. He was talking to us about how music has shaped the movement, how music has moved the movement. And this week we're going even deeper. He's going to talk to us about how music has opened doors and provided bridges for him to do work in the community. Don't go anywhere. Stay right there. You've been doing work locally. You've been doing work globally around the work of justice. Tell us, share with us what you've been doing.
Well, I would say we are a sanctuary congregation. And so in terms of the immigration issue and immigration justice, that's something that's really important to us. And that's been probably some of our oldest work that we've done for close to 40 years now. Welcoming immigrants in that space who are facing deportation and who are seeking asylum, and making sure that they have space where they can be safe, and space where if they need to hang out for a few days, to figure some things out, that our building is going to be a ministry for them. But also, I think once 2014 happened and Black Lives Matter really began to become a phrase and a consciousness across the city, we began to discern how we can be a part of that movement in a meaningful way, not only with our building being a ministry. I say that a lot, but that has been the case in terms of allowing groups to come and meet and inviting them to come and do their thing, and us getting out of their way. Sometimes that's the best way a church can be an ally with groups that feel harmed, is to say, hey, we're not going to do the whole theology thing right now. Just come use our building because we know you need some space, and let's build this relationship. Let's build this partnership. For us, working with young people across the south side of Chicago, where you all might know that the violence epidemic, we live in several epidemics and pandemics here on the south side of Chicago, as all Black people across this nation do. And so working to figure out how we can be more loving to them. And one of the things that came out of that was hearing them talk about access to healthcare. They came up with this issue and said, how come if you get shot on the north side, you 5 minutes from a hospital, but if you get shot on the south side, you 20 minutes from a hospital? Wow. What's that about, right? Wow. The young folks said this because they had lost one of their own. In 2010, Damian Turner got shot. He had to drive past hospitals that didn't have the appropriate equipment. And by the time he got to where he could be treated for this gunshot wound, he passed away. And so having a level 1 trauma center on the south side of Chicago, they began to cry out, was an issue that was a matter of life and death, literally. And so for us as a church, the moment I heard about that issue, it's like we got right behind them and have been talking about healthcare and have been for years now part of the fight for equity within health access to healthcare. And a couple years ago, won the fight for a level 1 trauma center on the south side of Chicago. And so to celebrate that, both as activists and church working together to make that happen, really has been able to show the possibilities of that relationship. When it is regarded mutually, when we go in this thing as equals and listen to one another. And so I would say, between immigration and healthcare justice and fighting violence on the south side, it's more than enough to keep our hands full. Every day is more work to be done. Just like I'm sure whoever's watching right now, you're in a congregation that is looking to get at issues and figure out how do we end this, how do we stop this, and there are folks. This is the one thing I would say: there are folks out there who are doing this work right now. And churches sometimes make the mistake of thinking we have to invent that. We got to create a ministry for this. Not always. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, yes. But not always. Usually, there are going to be folks out there doing the work. We need to go be partners, allies, accomplices, what have you, and figure out how we can be side by side with those folks, better resourcing them and adding to their capacity because they know the issue probably better than we do.
Absolutely. So you hit on some key points in that story. So I just kind of want to tease out some of the steps that you took to get to the big win in terms of bringing the trauma center to the community in need, right? So the very first thing you talked about was actually sitting with the people who were impacted and kind of hearing their story, and then being what we call being the voice to the voices, helping to champion that cause and seeing it through to resolution. You talked about a piece where you're building allyship and not just assuming that you have to start from ground zero, but partnering with people who've been in the fight for a long time, right? And just sometimes what I've learned is that your presence just helps to elevate and amplify the message that they've been working on for a really long time. So we talked about the allyship. What's another step that you guys took to help you get to the win in this process?
Well, I think the most important piece of all of this, and it includes those things that you just named, but overarching all of that is really just the ability to be led. Like a lot of times as church, we see ourselves as leaders. We want to be the leaders of this, but the ability to be led, to listen to those folks who are most affected in this, and to really, and not to say, here's what we want to do for you, but to ask, what do you need from us?
Right.
How do you think we can be most helpful? And that was when they told us, oh, well, we've been trying to talk to the University of Chicago for this long and all of this. And like, we're on the campus of the University of Chicago. I know these people. Like, you want to talk to them? Come on, let's go do this. Right. Like, and then was able to leverage my stand-in to be able to help them have a different kind of conversation, which resulted in those negotiations. But it really is about like, not just saying like, I'm going to lift your voice up. Like, if that's what you want, that's what I'm gonna do. But sometimes, like, just like you said, especially when the relationship was just starting and we were saying, well, what can we do? How can we be part of this? We got some churches who really want to be on the right side of history. We know it's some knuckleheads out here, but we want to do the right thing. And their answer constantly to us and to me was, show up. Mm-hmm. Show up. We're going to have a march. Show up. You're not going to say anything, right? Just show up. Your presence, your witness can make a difference. Yeah. And so we did that. And I did that to just show up and to just be there over and over again until they built trust. And the relationship grew to a place where we could have a different kind of conversation. Not just, hey, do you want to meet in our building? But is there anything we can offer to this movement from a strategic side? Because sometimes the best thing a church can do is not going to be strategic. It's going to be on the symbolic action side. It's going to be showing up to that march and that protest. It's going to be signing that petition. It's going to be bringing people to the action. And that's critical as well. But to be led by those, we don't have to assume what they need. We can ask, right. We can ask. And when we hear and when they answer, we can say, hey, does this align with our values? Okay. It might make us a little uncomfortable. Okay. But like, this is who we need to be right now. And Jesus is always challenging the disciples to move into a place of discomfort. Step out of the boat, Peter. You feed. Oh, they hungry. It's 5,000 people. They hungry. Okay, you go feed them. Like always to move into these spaces where they've never been, where they don't know if they can. And that then when they commit, then God shows up and provides the increases.
Spaces, though. Why they gotta be so uncomfortable?
Because that's where the new is. The new is in the uncomfortable, and what we're trying to do has not been done. Our ancestors don't know this freedom, like none of them ever have. So it's not like we can take their model, we can take their lessons, we can take their wisdom, but we don't know how this works. Every second that people of color that Black folks have been in America, we have been in detainment. We have been in a state of dehumanization. And so like, it's gotta be new. It's gotta be, whatever we do is gonna have to be a part of the wisdom of the past, those lessons, those experiences, those stories, brought together with the move of the Spirit that's happening in the present right now through us, with us, through others, working together. And that's going to take us somewhere we've not been before. That's scary. That's scary.
Very scary. I'm here to tell
But
you.
think, like, but more than what we must, as people of faith, be able to do is recognize that behind the fear of it, that there's so much beauty and possibility, and what we are doing. And that if we can be resilient in this and be courageous in this and not give in to our fear, it's not that we're not going to feel the fear, but when we give in to the fear is when we keep replaying these cycles of history. We cannot give in to the fear. We have an opportunity right now that we must seize.
Yeah, I was talking to Reverend Green, one of your Morehouse brothers, just last week. We just did an episode where he was talking to us about Dr. King's 6 steps to nonviolent social change, and I thought it was very interesting that in his steps, the steps that he outlined, one of the steps that he talked about was remaining committed.
Yeah.
And I think that that falls right in alignment with what you're talking about right now, is that in the face of fear, you may not know what's on the other side of that, but you have to remain committed to the cause. Because really, what's at stake in every situation, I don't care whether it's a local issue that you're doing in your community, whether it's a national issue that you're addressing, whether it's a global issue, but when you're talking about social justice work, at the heart of every issue is liberation and it's freedom. And freedom, if we can, turn the pages of the history books, freedom has never come without a cost, right? It's never come without a cost. So I wanted to just ask you a question in that vein, that understanding that there are so many people that have paved the way before us, before we got to this space, who is one of the civil rights leaders that's actually shaped and influenced your ministry around this work?
I would say probably most influential is Howard Thurman, description of the inward journey and how he tells the story of being a mystic as a Christian and really finding God within, and that being able to hold on to that peace of God within, giving him the courage to face everything that happens around us and outside of us, has really been profound for me and kept me in moments of fear, like we just talked about, like to be able to see God not in the results, but to see God in the work, and to see God in the moment of commitment, and to see God in the suffering. Thurman has given that gift to so many people, not only myself and probably Stephen, but to Martin Luther King, who he gave him the story of Gandhi and helped move him towards that understanding of nonviolent social action, and so he's one of those figures who was widely known in the early 20th century and is less so now. I'm starting to hear his name a little bit more and more quotes, because Thurman is eminently quotable. Like you just go Howard Thurman quotes on whatever your search engine is, and it like you're just gonna be like, dang, wow, like I gotta read some of this, but like he's just one of those figures that was in the background for so many people. And then I think alongside Thurman, there were so many women who had the fish fry dinner, at the church after the march, or rode the bus or drove the bus that people were getting on, or the van that people were getting on, or the pickup truck that people were getting on when they weren't riding the bus during the Montgomery boycott. That there are so many people who by all rights had no place in the movement, but found a place to use what they had. Like, listen, I can cook. All right. So here's what I'm gonna do. I can drive. Here's what I'm gonna do. And for the most part, when you hear those stories, those are women, those are young people. Those are like the John Lewises, right? Like these are these folks who just said, I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna commit, and we're gonna figure this out. And it is from them collectively that the power began to grow and swell to such a point where it could no longer be ignored, you know. And so it's those figures too. It's the Barrett Rustins and the Fannie Lou's and the
that's my favorite. She's my favorite.
Yeah.
Like one of the
it's
reasons
Mahalia,
yeah.
like Mahalia and her music and Aretha's music and like Marvin making What's Going On album, like in a moment where like he didn't have to make that, you know what I'm saying? You could just keep making love songs. It's Sam Cooke making Change Gonna Come when he doesn't have to make that song. He had already grown to be one of the first Black owners of a label, without making those songs, by making love songs. But to say, no, this is going to be my contribution to this. Those are my heroes,
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know where to take this conversation, because on the one hand, I got to acknowledge Fannie Lou Hamer, right? She is like my heroine. And one of the reasons that I love her is because she doesn't come with like all of the degrees and all the, the air of everything. She is the epitome of what we're talking about today. Somebody who what came out of her in terms of pushing a movement forward came out of her lived experience. Everybody remembers her quote, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. The frustration of what she experienced as a Black woman living in America, as a Black woman living, growing up in the South, and trying to make a way for her and her family in the South. That struggle. That's why I have so much reverence and respect for the things that she went through. I mean, we know her in the civil rights movement, right? But I mean, there are some things that she went through as a woman, right? Just we talk about healthcare and reproductive rights and, the way that she was violated just as a Black woman. I mean, those. Yeah. So I mean, I really appreciate, her being, one of the, I'm gonna call her the mother, one of the mothers of the movement when it talks about, civil rights. But I only bring that up to say that, for you out there who are watching, whatever your struggle is, there's purpose in your struggle. And if there is something that you find that is impacting you, and it's probably not just impacting you, it's probably impacting a community around you. And this is a time where we want to empower you to be able to do something about it. We want to encourage you to be able to stand up and use your voice and to use the resources and the tools that we're giving you today to make a difference. You are today's Fannie Lou Hamer. You are today's Malcolm X. You are today's Martin Luther King, right? So stop asking the question, where's the next? Because the next is found in you. And so the other place that I wanted to go with this, you were talking about Sam Cooke. Did you see that movie, One Night in Miami? Have you seen it yet?
Oh, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
I loved it. I actually just did a video the other day on my social media about it. Like, to me, like the power of friendship, like it's about like just the power of having those people in your life who push you, and hold you accountable and say, hey, I see this in you. You can do this, and we sometimes count on pastors to do that. Malcolm X was that person in that room, but like we can do that for each other, and the other thing that I loved about it was that it's a slice of the movement that's so important and so rarely told. Like when we talk about the civil rights movement, we talk about Medgar, Martin, Malcolm, the speakers. That's who we talk about, and the speeches and the quotes. We don't talk about the ways in which Muhammad Ali was part of that movement in the ring. We don't talk about the ways in which Sam Cooke was doing that on stage, or Jim Brown on the football field, or in front of the camera in Hollywood, and to be able to recognize and appreciate artistry and artists for what they can offer in a different kind of way. Like that movie really nailed it on the head. Regina King, she did her thing on that. She did her thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that movie lifted for me, regardless of, your faith tradition, I appreciated how they painted the picture of Malcolm being the person that was woke. And it reminded me of, because he pierced the consciousness of, those that were in his circle. And so, according to the way that the movie plays out, there would have never been, a Sam Cooke's, what's going on? Is that the right song?
Change Gonna Come.
Change Gonna Come.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sam Cooke's change gonna come. There would have never been, that had it not been for Malcolm X, who was willing to kind of grate the iron there, right? That was willing to provoke thought and challenge, how he showed up, not just professionally, but how he showed up as a Black man in the world that was around him. And so I think that says something to us too today about how we are evaluate who's in our circle and who's the person in your circle that's keeping you woke. Are you the person that's informing other people? Who's the influencer in your neighborhood, in your community, in your social circle? I don't know. This is just something I thought about about
that's
the
it.
roll call.
That's it. No, that's dope.
So I want to end this conversation with you giving a word of encouragement to artists out there. We have some powerful artists out there. I'm just believing by faith that we have some people out there who are looking for ways to contribute to the movement. We have some awesome photographers out there. We have some awesome vocalists out there. We have some awesome instrumentalists. We have poets. We have dancers. I mean, I think that when it comes to, the movement and arts in the movement, our talent is limitless within our community. So for the person that's not the, Black power to the people, kind of person, what advice would you give to help, the budding artists show up in this movement?
I think it is both as simple as and as difficult as being authentic and true to who you are and what you feel like you have to say right now. So often as artists, we worry about like, oh, I got to build a brand. I got to get these followers up. I got to get all this stuff up so that these people pay attention. We keep trying to like climb up the ladder. And sometimes I think all the time, we just have to be able to say, what do I have to say right now? What do I have to say that feels like I could do it in a way that best represents who I am and where my artistry is at this moment right now, and get it out to people so that I can be a contributor to what is happening right now. Like, what do you have to say? And I say that to people who are painters and dancers and stuff. I'm not just talking about songwriters and singers and rappers and poets, but like, we have a message and a way that we can communicate into this, and to know that to never lose sense of the power of art, whether it's from the inauguration or any other moment where art was able to really create it. It's a light that pierces the darkness, and pierces through sometimes even through words, and pierces through silence, and really can communicate human emotions that we need to be feeling right now, that help remind us of our humanity, whether that's anger, whatever that is. We got preachers. We need artists. We need you. We need what you're doing. And we need what you can contribute to all of this, because this movement does not have enough art in it. So we waiting for you. Seriously.
Amen.
We're waiting for you.
And can I just piggyback on the preacher part? I'm like, we have preachers, but we need preachers who are unafraid to preach the unadulterated truth.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's one
but
thing.
Those folks, but I don't call those folks preachers. Those like, the preacher is the person who just think that like, I got to preach in every single moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are people with sermons in their hearts and testimonies in their hearts, and that like, and are going, like, the way in which your art is going to become known is through the pulpit.
Yeah.
That's the way that God is going to use you. But that don't mean you're a preacher. You know what I'm saying? That mean you know how to preach.
Yeah.
I preach every Sunday. I ain't no preacher, and like, that's what I'm talking about. In that kind of way where people like you like automatically assume or look at a certain kind of voice in preaching and say, oh, this is who I gotta be, and I gotta raise my voice like this, and I gotta turn it like this, and like, no, be authentic. Like, what God is saying in your voice, do that. And if it's preaching, if it's rapping, if it's dancing, whatever it is, God will make room for that. The gift will make room for you, and this world will make room for your gifts.
I believe it. And I hope everybody that's out there that's watching, I hope you receive it. So Pastor Jay, I am so sad that we have to cut this conversation off, but we are going to have you back here at the Hope Activism Institute to talk more about, your work in social justice and how we can continue to move together in the body of faith. If you are out there watching, we just want to say thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And if you've been following us for the last couple of weeks, thank you for being a faithful follower. But look, it's not over. You can meet us right back here next Thursday at 7 p.m. because we're continuing the conversation. We'll be so privileged to have Bishop Reed and Episcopal Supervisor Reed, who's going to be talking to us more about this faith and justice work that's going on within our denomination. I hope all is well, and I look forward to seeing you right here next Thursday at 7 p.m. Peace. Wasn't that an amazing discussion? Once again, we want to thank Pastor Jay for coming through and talking to us about how music has shaped the movement. But guess what, y'all? You know what it is. We meet here every Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m. And let me tell you, you don't want to miss next week, because next week we sit down with Bishop Frank Reed and his lovely wife, Episcopal Supervisor Marla Reed. And we will be talking about how from the East Coast to the West Coast, they've been changing the game. Did you know that Bishop Reed was a part of the planning of the Million Man March? I mean, he was a major planner. But that's not all. I can't give it to you now. You got to tune in next Thursday, 7 o'clock. See you then.